It was a quiet Sunday afternoon at a bustling downtown cafe. The aroma of coffee mingled with soft chatter, the clinking of cups, and the hum of conversation. Among the patrons sat Mr. Walter Hayes, an 82-year-old veteran with a life story few knew but many could admire. He had fought in wars most could only read about, carrying scars both visible and hidden. That day, however, fate seemed determined to humble him. The cafe manager, busy and impatient, approached and, without understanding, told him to leave. The words cut through the air like a knife. But before the old man could respond, 6 men in plain clothes quietly rose from their tables. Navy SEALs, disciplined and silent, forming a protective barrier around him. In that moment, the cafe fell completely silent. Respect wasn't demanded, was shown. It was an ordinary Sunday afternoon. The kind where people sought a little comfort from the humdrum of life. Downtown cafes were bustling, laptops clicking, baristas calling out orders, and the soft aroma of roasted coffee beans filling the air. Among the patrons, Walter Hayes sat in a corner, alone but composed. His hands knotted and lined with age, rested on a worn leather jacket draped over the chair. Walter had lived a life few could imagine. He had enlisted at 17, fought in wars overseas, and returned home carrying the invisible weight of battle. Veterans groups often sought his counsel, younger soldiers admired him, and those who knew him personally often described him as a quiet pillar of strength. Today, though he simply wanted a cup of coffee and a moment of peace, the cafe was crowded. The barista was hurried, the manager preoccupied. When Walter placed his order and tried to settle in with his cup, the manager approached, his face tight with irritation. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he said abruptly. Walter blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. "Excuse me, you heard me," the manager replied, gesturing toward the door. "This isn't the place for this." His words were vague, yet laced with judgment. The cafe hushed slightly. People looked up from their conversations. Walter, who had endured the roar of artillery, the chaos of combat, and the weight of loss, now faced something seemingly trivial but equally demeaning in its own way. Before he could respond, a ripple of movement drew attention. 6 men, all plainclothed but unmistakably carrying themselves with trained precision, stood slowly. Each one had an aura of authority, tempered by discipline. They were Navy SEALs, veterans like Walter, and their eyes were calm, unwavering. Without a word, they formed a protective arc around him. The manager froze. Patrons leaned forward, sensing the tension. Walter looked around, his stoic expression giving way to quiet appreciation. "It's okay," he murmured softly. "I didn't need help." One SEAL shook his head. "Some things are bigger than the individual," he said quietly. "Respect is one of them." The cafe fell silent. No one dared move. The SEALs didn't shout, didn't demand. Their very posture radiated a presence that demanded recognition. Minutes passed like hours. Slowly, the manager's face paled, realizing the magnitude of the moment. Walter had not asked for loyalty, but loyalty had appeared, and the patrons, witnessing this display of respect and solidarity, began to clap. Not a loud cheer, but a soft, reverent acknowledgement of honor. Walter finally spoke. Voice calm, carrying the weight of decades of wisdom. "Courage isn't always on the battlefield. Sometimes, it's standing your ground quietly, knowing who you are." One of the SEALs nodded. "And sometimes, it's standing up for others who've done more than most will ever know." The manager stepped back, muttering an apology, though Walter waved it off. It wasn't the apology he wanted, it was the acknowledgement, the understanding that some lives carry a weight beyond ordinary measure. The SEALs returned to their seats, blending once more into the crowd, invisible yet profoundly present. Walter sipped his coffee slowly, savoring the warmth, the peace, and the silent respect that had filled the room. He realized that honor isn't always loud or celebrated, it can appear quietly, in the standing up of strangers, in the unwavering recognition of service and sacrifice. By the time he left the cafe, Walter Hayes walked a little taller, not because he had been defended, but because he had witnessed the essence of true respect: action without fanfare, courage without expectation, and loyalty without reward. Word of the incident spread quickly. Social media posts shared photos of the moment, captions highlighting respect, veterans, and the silent power of recognition. The story resonated, reminding people of the value of humility, honor, and the profound ways one can serve not only a nation but humanity itself. For Walter, it was just another day, But, for those who witnessed, it became a lesson etched into memory. A lesson that some battles are fought in silence, some victories are quiet, and some heroes never ask to be noticed, they simply deserve it. And in that downtown cafe, respect had spoken louder than words ever could. CTA 150 words. This story reminds us all that honor and respect are not just gestures, they are actions. Walter Hayes, a veteran who had already given so much, didn't seek recognition. Yet, in a quiet moment, 6 Navy SEALs stood up, showing the world that courage isn't always on a battlefield, it's often in standing up for what's right. If this story moved you, share it with friends and family to remind them of the power of respect, solidarity, and honor. Take a moment today to recognize the veterans around you, to thank someone for their service, and to act with the courage and humility that makes a difference in everyday life. Let this story inspire you. Sometimes the smallest acts of acknowledgement carry the heaviest weight of love and respect.